you had a lot of evidence, it sounds
Absolute
like,
evidence.
that bin Laden was not in Afghanistan or Pakistan,
Right.
where he was supposedly ultimately killed. Not in Iraq. He was in Iran. But Iran was also in the crosshairs of the Bush administration. It was part of the so-called axis of evil at the time. People were talking about invading Iran then. Why would the Bush administration hide the fact that...
It wasn't the Bush administration.
Oh?
Let me explain to you. And this is what Trump needs to understand. It started under Clinton, when the Clinton administration, Bill and Hillary Clinton, who I have no respect for, were allowed to be themselves to be used so they could make money. Tens and tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, because they allowed people, unscrupulous people, to control the agenda in Russia and around the world. And you've been going after some of this involving Russia. I can give you dozens of hard examples.
I believe it. And we've talked about this off camera, but I just want to get to specifically who was hiding the fact that bin Laden was in Iran and why.
Okay. It continued under Bush Jr.
Yep.
As I said, up until 2000, they wanted me to be chairman. All of a sudden, when I started questioning 9/11, all of a sudden the Bush people said, whoa.
Yeah, I bet.
John Sununu, after I was out of office, who I had a lot of respect for, was Bush's chief
smart
of
man.
staff.
Yeah, I know.
I was in his office, and he said this to me. He said, you know, Congressman, you were a great member. Everyone respected you, but you made one fundamental mistake. I said, what was that, John? He said, when you come to this city, you're either on one rail or the other rail. And you went down the middle and took on both rails. I said, well, John, I didn't pledge allegiance to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I pledged allegiance to the Constitution. You guys were ecstatic when I took on the Clintons, when I took on Sandy Berger, when I took on the scumbags and what they did with China and Russia. You were ecstatic. But then when I saw things happening at 9/11, all of us, he said, well, that's why you're not here. I said, you know what, John? So be it. It's not the end of my life. And one day I'll tell the story, John. One day I'll tell the story, because that's what America needs to hear. They need members of Congress who don't become duped by scumbags in the intelligence agency making money for themselves. And you know what, Tucker? I challenge them. I'll name them, and I'll give their dollar amounts of where they're making money today in the countries that we're at war with. They care about themselves and their power. They don't care about the lives of the kids that we send to war. I saw it in Libya. I saw it in North Korea. I led delegations that were bipartisan to all of those places. They took it out on my daughter.
So I just want to get one more time to the question of who was hiding the fact that bin Laden was actually in Iran? And
our intelligence agencies, they have plausible deniability. In the end, I have 10 silver bullets, including 2 royal family members from 2 different royal families, from 2 different countries, including, in the end, the person that was in the room, who was a knock for our government for 50 years. He's not from the U.S. He's become a friend of mine. He's been to my home. We've met dozens of times. And on one of my trips to the Middle East, he said to me, you know, he calls me, my dear, you were right. I said, about what? He said, about a lot of things. But you're right about bin Laden. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he was placed in Iran and Baluchistan. He said, I said, you know? He said, yes, I know that. He said, I was in the room when the deal was cut. So the U.S. has plausible deniability that they weren't in the room.
Was the point to get to Iraq?
The point was to the point was to manipulate, to get our troops committed, to go over to fight the battles in Afghanistan, Iraq, and that whole region of the world.
Yes.
And they had to have the justification to do that.
I believe it.
But in the end, when 5 years ago, and even Trump doesn't know this, I'm sure, we killed someone that Trump took great credit for, and I applaud him for it. And he said, we killed this guy.
Soleimani?
That's right. Soleimani was the guy the deal was cut with. The deal was not cut with the Iranian government. And we need to understand that. And this is the heart of what we have to get to. The Iranian people are not our enemy. I wrote this book in 2005, Countdown to Terror. It's all about Iran. It says that the people of Iran are not our enemy. And this book was endorsed by Jim Woolsey with a 3-page letter.
Former CIA director.
This book was endorsed by Jack Caravelli, Gore's CIA advisor. They both endorsed my book. The book was so popular that the people of Iran published it in Farsi. There it is. And they published the book. Without my approval, they published my book. It became a bestseller in Iran because it said, you're not the enemy of the American people. Here's what happened, Tucker. When the Shah was in power, think back, we were best friends with Iran.
Of course.
Our intelligence people trained the Iranian intelligence people. We trained them. They were our people. When the radical Ayatollahs and the mullahs took over Iran, they did not bring in a new intelligence service. They did not change the agency. The IRG stayed the same. The deal to place bin Laden in Iran wasn't cut with the Iranian government. It was cut with Soleimani. And that's why we killed him. Our intelligence agency has tentacles around the world. And they're not answering to anybody. And that's the problem right now. That's the problem Trump has. Yeah, he can cut off the security clearance of 51, but that network extends far and wide around the world, and they can play all the games they want in Ukraine, in other countries. And until we go after that, this is not going to stop.
It's one of the saddest things about this country. The country's getting sicker. Despite all of our wealth and technology, Americans aren't doing well overall. Obesity, heart disease, autoimmune conditions, all kinds of horrible chronic illnesses, weird cancers are all on the rise. Probably a lot of reasons for this, but one of them definitely is Americans don't eat very well anymore. They don't eat real food. Instead, they eat industrial substitutes, and it's not good. It's time for something new, and that's where Masa chips come in. Masa has decided to revive real food by creating snacks how they used to be made, how they're supposed to be made. A Masa chip has just 3 simple ingredients, not 117. 3. No seed oils, no artificial additives, just real delicious food. And I know this because we eat a ton of them in my house. And by the way, I feel great. So you can still continue to snack, but you can do it in a healthy way with chips without feeling guilty about it. Masa chips are delicious. They taste how a tortilla chip is supposed to taste. But the thing is, you can hit them really, really hard, and I have, and not feel bloated or sluggish after. You feel like you've done something decent for your body. You don't feel like you got a head injury, or you don't feel filled with guilt. You feel light and energetic. It's the kind of snack your grandparents ate. Worth bringing back. So you can go to masachips.com. Masa is M-A-S-A, by the way. masachips.com/Tucker to start snacking. Get 25% off. We enjoy them. You will too. That's consistent, all consistent with what I've seen.
And that's
I don't think that's not a crazy statement.
That's the challenge that Trump has right now. I still think he's at risk. Last May, I went on a TV show locally in the Philadelphia area, and I said my greatest challenge is they're going to try to take Trump out. A month later, they did the attack. You know, it goes back to when I kept quiet because I couldn't trust any of the administrations after I left, including the Bush administration, because Bush wasn't in control. And I can give you example after example.
I saw
of Bush not being in control. Yeah. I knew who was in control. When Trump was going in, I met with Rudy Giuliani. I had 2 private dinners with him up in New York. I had not known Rudy that well. I said, Rudy, this is what's going to happen. The deep state's going to undermine Trump. They don't want him. They will undermine him by removing his ability to understand how they operate. Before he took office, they took out General Mike Flynn.
Yep.
When they took out Flynn, Trump was like a baby in the woods. And for 4 years, they used the Congress and they used their connections to derail this country. That's the problem that occurred in the first Trump 4 years. This time, I'm trying to get Trump to realize he's got a great start. But the people around him don't know what they don't know. They don't have that historical understanding of what this just didn't happen with Trump. I mean, they took me out in 2006.
So let's get to that. They took you out in 2006, and that's kind of where this conversation began. I remember that very well. And it was like there were pictures on TV. I worked then at CNN. There were pictures of, FBI and their blue jackets outside your daughter's house. And it's like, Curt Weldon, corruption scandal. And then you lost to Sestak?
Yep.
Sestak, who was like a former general and just like
He got demoted. He was a 3-star demoted to a 2-star. His wife worked on the Clinton Security Council. She had intelligence ties. She still does. Her name was, I think, Clark. And so he was on the NSC.
But Clinton. He was like the ultimate deep stater.
He didn't live in the district. He doesn't live there now.
Right.
He came into the district to run. He had been in the district. And then after he lost, he went back down to Virginia.
And all of a sudden, I remember all this really well, thinking like,
well, here's what happened.
And then he got, massive funding from around the country.
You know who ran his campaign? His campaign was managed by the staff director of Sandy Berger's company. Sandy Berger sent his woman to run the Sestak campaign. And I did a 1-hour floor speech about Sandy Berger, calling him a traitor.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the
I'd like to, and I'm just getting far afield once again, and my apologies for that. But okay, so to your daughter and the FBI raid, Did you have warning? Like what?
No advance
Tell us what happened.
No advance warning. We would have won the election. The polls were in October were showing that we were up by about 6 or 8 points. All my elections have been landslides because I'm a moderate Republican, and this one I would have become chairman of the committee. No doubts about that. For some reason, the Sestak campaign was maxed out every week in a TV buy. And 3 weeks before my election, I get a call on a Monday morning that agents had appeared at my daughter's home at 7 a.m. And I didn't know what's that all about. And so I immediately said, cancel the TV ads. My daughter's more important than some TV ads for a campaign. And I didn't know whether she might have done something wrong. I didn't think she would have. And so we stopped the campaign. But something that I haven't talked about in the past, Tucker, the same time they raided my daughter's house, they raided a lawyer in my district who's a Democrat who, interestingly enough, they shut down his Philadelphia office. They brought dogs and helicopters and all to downtown Philly, same time. At the time they raided his office, he had been working for FBI counterintelligence against Russia for 2 years that I had arranged 2 years earlier. I had arranged 2 years earlier, under oath. So the counterintel people handling him went to his office and were sitting with him while these agents from D.C. come in, and you had 2 sets of agents in the same office at the same time. And the counterintel people are saying, don't answer any questions. We don't know what this is, but you're doing work for our country. And the other ones don't know why they're sent there. Their first question is, Mr. Gallagher, isn't it true that you're related to Congressman Curt Weldon? And John starts laughing at them because Congressman Weldon's wife's last name is the same name as mine, and you're from the FBI? I know who told them that, Tucker.
Wait, so what was the pretext for raiding your daughter's house?
There was none. They never talked to her.
So what was she charged with? What did she go
They never charged her with anything. They never talked to her. There was no charge.
So the FBI just shows up,
raids, takes boxes out, and then gives her the boxes back unopened, still taped. Nothing. Nothing.
When did they give the boxes back?
That was months later.
After you'd lost.
Yeah, and not only that, 3 months after the election, the annual fire dinner in Washington, which I started, 2,000 people attend, members of Congress, House and Senate. George Bush, the father, former CIA director, does a tribute to me, which I sent it to your staffer. You can play it. And he says in the tribute, Congressman Weldon, you're the kind of leader that America needs. You're the kind of leader that leaves the country safer, stronger. Those aren't my words. Those are George Bush Sr.'s words to 2,000 people after they raided my daughter's house.
After you'd already been neutralized.
After I'd been
you were not going to be.
It was all about getting me out.
So did you? So the raid comes. You must be completely confused. Do you call your daughter and say, like, what's going on?
She was totally devastated. Ruined her life. How do you deal with that?
I don't know.
How do you deal with your kid?
I'm probably going to find out at some point.
If you want to come after me. And that's what I say to them. They're scumbags.
Oh, I know.
You scumbag. If you want to come after me publicly. But if you're going to hide and go do something behind somebody, which you do, now there are good people in the agency, but there are scumbags that work in our agencies. And I know them. And they're making money. They're $1 million people. And their $1 million companies are going to be exposed if it's the last thing I do. And you'll see the ties around the world to the $1 million intel people who've made money off the backs of young American kids who have died in wars while they make money. Or their companies make money. And I'll give you example after example of that. In Russia, in Ukraine, around the world, in Libya. That's what's wrong. And until we understand that, it's not going to stop. And Donald Trump's people need to understand that. We're not playing tiddlywinks out in the schoolyard. We're playing with bad people.
I agree.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.